Insomniac Spider-Man 2 is upon us, and what better way to celebrate the release of a new Spider-Man game than to cover the official Spider-Man manga, which features characters we'll be seeing in the game like Venom, Spider-Man, and many others. In this story, we follow a high schooler in Japan named Yu Onomae, who starts off at a new school and doesn't quite fit in, as he struggles with his own weakness after seeing a boy from his school getting bullied and not being able to step in to help. However, everything changes when Yu finds an abandoned Spider-Man suit in an alleyway with a white spider logo across the chest, meaning this is obviously a spin-off of Insomniac Spider-Man, or maybe even a variant of some kind. However, in this story, when Yu finds Spider-Man's outfit, he takes it home and tries it on as he presses a strange button on the suit's gauntlets and is surprised when webs come out, as he puts the entire costume on for the first time and accidentally rips off his closet door. This young man with no spider powers of his own is now the only one who can take up the role of Spider-Man, but being a coward, the first thing on Yu's mind is how he can get the suit back to the real Spider-Man, who we'll see soon going through really dark times. In the Spider-Man manga, we saw how Yu Onomae found a Spider-Man suit with a white symbol on the front like the one from Insomniac Spider-Man 2. However, not wanting anything to do with it, Yu goes around town looking for its owner, as we see him visit a few iconic Spider-Man locations and even walk past Matthew Murdock without realizing it, since his manga is filled with Marvel Easter eggs like that. However, things take a turn when Yu tries the suit on himself and stands on top of a building, hyping himself up to try web swinging before chickening out, as a crowd forms around him calling out for Spider-Man and telling him about a massive building fire happening nearby, which puts Yu in a really interesting predicament because as Spider-Man, he can't just walk away from this situation. However, Yu has no powers, so just how is he gonna tackle this? Yu embarrasses himself a bit by walking down the fire escape, confusing everyone on why Spider-Man isn't web swinging, but as he hypes himself up, he runs towards the burning building, asking himself just what it is that he can do to help out here. As a woman comes up to Spider-Man telling him her son is still on the 3rd floor and only he can help, and things get very real very quickly. After a boy with no powers finds Peter's Spider-Man suit and takes it for a spin, he ends up in a dangerous situation when he's at the scene of a huge building fire and is the only one who can help the people inside. As Yu thinks to himself that there's nothing that he can do, yet he still begins climbing the burning building. Keep in mind, this is not the web crawler himself, so when Yu does this, he has to grab onto a pipe and different balcony ledges to get up there, but he even thinks to himself that there's no turning back because a fall from this height would be worse than a couple burns. Arriving on the 3rd floor, Yu starts to scream and hears a voice in the bathroom, finding a small boy hiding in the tub who he grabs and tries to take back the way that he came, but the inside of the building starts to collapse around him, making him go another way. At every turn, Spider-Man keeps getting blocked off by fire, and as he's carrying the boy up the stairs, he reaches the limits of his strength as smoke fills his lungs and Spider-Man nearly passes out, realizing that in this situation, everything anyone ever said about him being weak and useless might have been true. Yu has only recently become Spider-Man by accident, and he finds himself passing out in the middle of a building fire, but when the boy in his arms grabs Yu's suit and shows him how scared he is, it lights a fire in Spider-Man's soul that pushes him to get the boy onto the roof of the building, where Spider-Man uses his webs on the metal railing to create a rope for him and the boy to rappel down the building with. But just as he's halfway down, the metal holding up his spider webs breaks. This sends Yu and the boy falling multiple stories down towards the ground. However, thankfully for them, the civilians below opened up a massive cushion for them to fall on, as everything seems to work out, and the boy's mom thanks Spider-Man for saving him. But Yu sneaks away quickly after and heads home because of the pain that he's in after jumping off of a building. And 5 days later, he's still in pain as he wakes up and sees a newspaper talking about how Spider-Man hasn't saved anyone for a few days, causing the public to be uneasy. Elsewhere, we see a man stumbling through a sewer as the symbiote struggles to wrap around him, as he says, "I'm not a monster, I'm Peter Parker," as he loses control and Venom is born. After finding Spider-Man's suit and saving a young boy from a fire without any powers, we see the main character of the Spider-Man manga, Yu Onomae, walking through the city wondering where the real Spider-Man is as the city gets restless. As he gets to his gym, he notices that a rock climbing competition is going on, and one contestant, a girl named Emma Pearson, instantly grabs his attention because of her skill. And after the match, she stops Yu and questions him on why she hasn't seen him around school lately. But after avoiding the conversation, he watches as she gets into a car, and a group of thugs escaping a robbery hijack the car that she's in to make their getaway, causing Spider-Man to don his suit and get in a taxi to follow them since he's still too scared to try web swinging. Thankfully, his taxi driver gets in character and takes them on a crazy chase, which ends when our fake Spider-Man webs up the getaway car, causing it to crash when one of the robbers says they could never shoot Spider-Man since they're a fan of his. From here, Spidey gets away with the girl who notices a cut on his arm while she's thanking him. However, Yu rushes away by trying to web swing for the very first time and waking up in some bushes nearby with his entire body in pain, so he's still not ready for that. After our fake Spider-Man of no powers saves a girl who goes to his school using his very real web shooters during a car chase, he barely manages to get himself to school due to his injuries and how exhausted he is after the chase. However, when Emma spots him in the hallway, she recognizes the wound on his arm as the same one that she saw Spider-Man get the day before, instantly making the connection that you is Spider-Man. Elsewhere, for the very first time, we actually get to see what Mary Jane is up to as she arrives at Aunt May's house asking about Peter since he's been MIA for a few days, with Aunt May saying that sometimes that happens when he gets neck deep in his research. MJ leaves the house and tries calling Peter's phone, being really surprised when he finally picks up, as Peter tells her that work has kept him busy, but he'll make it up to her if she's able to be a little patient, telling her he'll see her soon, as we see a man in shadow talking on the phone to Mary Jane as the real Peter Parker struggles with the black suit in the sewers on a screen in front of the man, as slowly Peter begins to transform more and more into Venom, and we now have some mysterious character pretending to be Peter and even being convincing enough to convince Mary Jane. After our new Spider-Man gets his identity figured out by a girl at school rather easily, she goes in his backpack and finds the actual Spider-Man suit, confirming the truth to her as she tells you to meet her after school, as you thinks about how superheroes probably have super successful private lives. But on that end, we cut over to Peter Parker as he continues to stumble through the sewers, struggling with the symbiote, and Peter starts to remember how he got in the situation in the first place. It starts with a really important day for Peter as he needs to get to Mary Jane's performance and take her to dinner afterwards. However, as he swings over the rooftops of New York, it seems like today everybody needs help. Spider-Man helps a woman who gets her purse snatched by a bike rider, and he helps an old man crossing the street who dropped all of his vegetables. Realizing he might be a little late, Peter stops for some flowers from a nearby florist and gets himself onto a nearby roof so he can get changed. However, at that moment behind him, we hear even more sirens going off as Spider-Man prepares to dive into the city once more. However, behind him, we see a large sharp tail nearing our hero as Peter's spider senses activate and he jumps off the roof as part of it gets blown off, and Scorpion is here. After following the story of a new Spider-Man named Yu Onomai who found Peter's suit, we started a flashback where Peter gets sneak attacked by Scorpion as he's trying to get to Mary Jane's performance. And as Peter dodges his attack, his flowers are completely destroyed and sent flying as he sends webs towards Scorpion and says, "If she kicks me to the curb, I'm blaming you." Scorpion says, "Swing and a miss," as he dodges the webs. However, Spider-Man pulls down a Stark Industries billboard onto his head. A Scorpion flies over in front of an office building and tells everyone inside to keep watching since they won't want to miss the fall of Spider-Man. Peter lands on the side of the building and him and Scorpion square off hundreds of feet above the city, as elsewhere MJ gets her hair done for a performance and her friends joke about how they'll finally get to meet her Phantom Man. However, as she looks at Peter's text about being almost there 5 minutes ago, Peter dodges a piercing tail attack from Scorpion and webs up his face as he gives him a couple of hits and does no damage because of Scorpion's new armor. However, as Scorpion swings at Peter again and misses, he sends the stinger towards the innocent civilians, causing Peter to catch it and stand in place as Scorpion beats him down for free, and our Spider is in trouble. After the old Spider-Man gets into a fight with Scorpion on the side of a building, he tells everyone to run as Scorpion beats him down holding Spider-Man with his tail. However, once everyone evacuated the building, Peter does a flip and gets behind Scorpion, using his webs to come back in with a vicious kick that still does no damage to Scorpion because of his new armor. So Spider-Man, wanting to get this over with as soon as possible, realizes the trick to beating this villain as he grabs Scorpion's tail and shoves it into Scorpion's back, which pierces his armor and finally gets the job done as the suit shuts down and police arrest Gargan. Spider-Man smiles looking at his phone and being glad that he just made it in time to get to Mary Jane's show. However, as he turns to swing away, he hears sirens going off because of a fire in a building nearby, and for a second thinks about leaving it to the city to handle for itself, but he turns around last second because that's not the Spider-Man way. Of course, after everything is said and done, Peter misses MJ's performance and gets blocked. When he goes home, he gets a call from J. Jonah telling him he's fired because he was nowhere to be found when Spider-Man was fighting Scorpion and has no photos of it. And as Peter sits in his bed thinking about simpler times of Aunt May and Uncle Ben, he wonders if the world really needs a Spider-Man at all. After focusing on a Peter Parker flashback for a bit and seeing how awful his love life was going before he quit being Spider-Man, we see as our new Spider-Man struggles with a girl in school who knows his secret identity, as she tells him no one needs to know as long as he follows her every order. She takes them to a private room in the school and says she really wanted to thank him for saving her, as she tells him to hand her his suit and begins to sew together and patch up any holes and cuts left in it from when he saved her in it. It's here where Emma says she made up her mind and she wants to be Spider-Man's aide, and tells you first things first, she's gonna make sure he passes all of his classes by tutoring him and staying by his side. Since that day, Emma and you have spent every day together after school studying and getting closer, as you even starts to learn how to sew so he can make fixes on the suit himself. The entire time, Yu has felt like a stranger at his own school, and Emma helps him open up and they bond. As the week finally comes to a close and Yu aces his test, he's surprised when Emma introduces him to her friends since he doesn't have any of his own. The entire time, Yu feels like this is only happening because he's pretending to be Spider-Man. However, as he's about to come clean, he looks into Emma's eyes as she wonders if he's okay, as the time for him to prove himself draws near. As Yu is falling in love and having an amazing time with Emma and her friends, one of them takes out their phone and shows everyone a live stream going on by a streamer named Screwball, who says that today she has a special guest on her stream, and of course, it's Spider-Man. She hugs a Spidey plushie and says that there's a hidden bomb that'll blow up in 2 hours unless Spider-Man finds her and joins her stream. And as Yu begins to panic, the entire building shakes as Screwball says, "Here's your first hint," and everyone runs outside to the rooftop to see a nearby building of black smoke coming out of it as chaos spreads in the streets. Screwball says, "I'll be waiting, Spider-Man," as Yu has a full-blown panic attack on the rooftop, realizing that these people will die if he does nothing, but he's not even the real Spider-Man. It's at this point where Emma puts her hand on his shoulder, showing how worried she is for him, but saying she believes in him, that Yu dons a Spider-Man suit once again and stands in the middle of the street where Screwball asks him to go, as the entire city watches the stream and sees Spider-Man's return. However, in a nearby building, we see a woman putting her mask on and getting ready to head out as Cindy Moon, aka Silk, enters the story. After Screwball, a villain who uses streaming to do her crimes and get clout off of Spider-Man, forces Yu to come out of hiding and use the suit. She lands in front of him as the entire city watches and explains the rule of her game, with Spider-Man just needing to catch her and take the detonator that she has hidden in a Spider-Man plushie, and if not, he can just say goodbye to a few city blocks. Screwball gets on her flying surfboard and glides away at full speed, saying the challenge begins. However, the big problem here is that our new Spider-Man still can't web swing, because if you remember, he has no powers and would break his arms. So Spidey starts running down the street after Screwball, leaving everyone confused, as Screwball escapes at full speed, telling Spider-Man her fans want to see web swinging, so we won't be able to catch her without it. Still being too scared, Yu comes up with a genius plan, and by monitoring social media and finding out where Screwball is hiding as she waits for him to find her, he gets close and fires a web that completely misses her before she's even able to notice that he's there. And as she turns around, she sees our new Spider-Man on the roof of a speeding train, holding himself down using webs, as he tells himself to stay calm and try again, and uses the web shooters to grab the plushie from her, but something is wrong. On a challenge from Screwball, the villainous streamer in Spider-Man's manga, we see Yu, our powerless Spider-Man, crying on the roof of a train as he realizes people are gonna die if he doesn't catch Screwball, but he knows he has no way of doing that because he can't actually web swing. Spider-Man sits there for a while reading the replies on Twitter of people still having faith in him, and he looks at the stitched area where Emma fixed his suit and cries even more, saying, "I'm not him. I'm not Spider-Man." But something begins to burn inside of Yu's soul, something that picks up more and more. Yu continues to cry, saying, "Sorry everyone, I'm not him. I just can't do it. I'm too scared. I know I'll mess it up because I'm no superhero." And as he says this, he starts to stand up from the moving train with his legs wobbling, but slowly Yu starts to stand firm and even begins to run and run and run until he's in a full dash. As Yu says, "I'm no superhero, and yet I still have to try," as Yu runs and jumps off of the train as it goes over a bridge and puts his hand out towards the city, finally brave enough to try web swinging for the first time. But in this dire situation, how exactly will he do? After being too afraid to web swing since he doesn't actually have any of the same powers that Peter Parker has, only the suit, Yu Onomai realizes that he can't save New York from Screwball without trying. So despite how horrified he is, he runs and jumps off of a train and begins web swinging for the very first time in his life, and of course instantly crashes into the side of a building as he softens the blow by shooting another web in a different direction. Spider-Man gets dragged across the building by gravity and inertia as he says, "It hurts! It hurts! This is horrifying, but I'm doing it." He puts one hand in front of the other and continues to latch on to buildings one at a time, starting to get the hang of it, but saying he'll never get used to the heights. However, people will die if he stops moving, so he focuses and keeps pushing forward. For a second, Yu jokes around that he wishes he found Iron Man's suit in the alley instead, because it would have helped way more in the situation and kept him safe if he fell. But at that moment, he spots Screwball and is able to sneak up on her with his web swinging to web up her glider's exhaust hole, causing her to crash right into a tree. As Spider-Man crashes right next to her, not knowing how to land, and Spider-Man disables the bomb, but not before Screwball steals a kiss from him in front of her entire stream and Emma, who was watching. After web swinging for the first time to catch Screwball as she puts all of New York in danger, Spider-Man is confused and Screwball steals a kiss from him in front of her entire stream and then reveals to Spidey that there were actually never any bombs, and the first one that went off was a planned destruction by the city, so without committing any actual crime, she flies away, ending her stream, leaving Yu pretty annoyed that she just got away with everything she did. However, as our new powerless Spider-Man takes a second to rest, elsewhere we see that as Screwball is gliding away while complaining about Spider-Man damaging her board, she makes eye contact with someone standing on the side of a nearby building, saying, "And who might you be?" At that moment, the woman in front of her points 2 fingers at Screwball and completely webs her up against the building, and at night we see Yu in his room completely bruised up but still standing after the long day, as he talks to Emma, who says that she's proud that he was able to arrest Screwball. But wait, he didn't. So what's going on? Wait, does this mean the real Spider-Man is back in action? Or is it someone else? As Yu has this thought, he doesn't realize that behind him on his ceiling, he's being watched by another Spider family member, the one, the only Cindy Moon, aka Silk. After finding Spider-Man suit and deciding that he can become the new Spider-Man even without powers, Yu has had a pretty hard time but has started to make a bit of a name for himself when he's surprised in his room by a young woman in a spider costume of her own, who webs Spider-Man's mask out of Yu's hands as she reveals herself and questions who he is. Yu gets confused and tries to call for help since he has no idea who this is, as she webs up his hands and mouth to continue her questioning, saying one more time, "Who are you and why do you have this suit?" After getting the webs off of Yu's mouth, she looks around and sees a bunch of hero merch in this guy's room, including a Spider-Man poster, realizing that this might not be a bad person. It's here where Yu explains everything that's happened so far and even tells Sydney that he thought about hiring a private investigator named Jessica Jones to find the real Spider-Man and give him his suit back, but things kept happening. Silk tells Yu that he did what was necessary, and who knows what would have happened to the city if they realized Spider-Man disappeared. It's here where she removes her mask and says, "Call me Silk," shaking Yu's hand and giving our new Spider-Man his first true ally, as Silk begins to explain just how she got worked into the story in the first place, and we'll explain that in the next part. In the Spider-Man manga, where a random boy finds Spider-Man's costume, our main character gets approached by Cindy Moon, aka Silk. However, the version of the character that exists in this manga is rather interesting, and since most people are only learning who this character is thanks to the end of Marvel's Spider-Man 2, I wanted to explain her in a bit more context. Cindy Moon is a girl who was not only bit by a spider, but was actually bit by the same spider as Peter Parker. She tells you that she's not related to Spider-Man, but being bit by the same spider makes them really close in a way that no one else could understand, to the point where Silk can even sense Peter and how far away he is from her, showing how linked the two truly are. Originally, she was held in a facility and Spider-Man ended up saving her. However, because of that and the spider bite that they share, this causes the two to be instinctually attracted to one another, which leads to weeks and weeks of mating. Eventually, the two decide to just be friends, not sure if it's a spider bite doing this to them or their actual feelings. However, even in this chapter of the manga, when Silk is describing Peter to Yu, she says he has big muscles and starts blushing, as she gives Yu her number and promises to look for Peter together since her Silk sense isn't working anymore. However, soon she won't need it, as Cindy Moon ventures into the sewers to look for Peter Parker and finds something even worse. In Spider-Man Fake Red, this entire time we've been following a new Spider-Man. However, over the course of the story, we've seen small glimpses of Peter Parker as he struggles with the Venom symbiote in the sewers of New York, and a strange man watches him from the shadows on a camera, preparing Peter to destroy the city. As Silk leaves the new Spider-Man's room after meeting him, she tells him the classic "with great power comes great responsibility" line that she learned from Peter to encourage him to do his best, but keep his head on straight, and finally leaves the search for Peter as Yu goes on a rock climbing date with his new friend Emma, since of course even Spider-Man has to try balancing his private life. While our new Spider-Man is busy, it's up to Silk to continue to search as she follows her Silk sense into the sewers of New York because she got a faint feeling that she thought might have been Peter, but as she looks around she sees nothing but stench lines and darkness. It's at this point where she texts Yu telling him that she needs help down there to cover the entire sewer system, so she sends Yu her location. However, at that moment behind Silk, we hear low growls as they get closer and closer as a giant hulking figure takes a swipe at Cindy Moon, sending her flying into a wall and destroying it, and a fully venomed out Peter Parker screams in excitement as a new battle begins. After a long search for Peter Parker in the Spider-Man manga, Cindy Moon, aka Silk, wanders into the sewers alone to find her ex-lover Peter Parker and stumbles upon Venom instead as she gets attacked and thrown across the sewers by his awesome power. However, she does a flip and shoots webs back at him, telling the monster if he knows where Spider-Man is that he needs to answer her now for his own good, as Venom turns around again, destroying a wall with a punch that narrowly misses Cindy Moon thanks to her perfect balance and Silk sense. The entire time Peter is inside the symbiote, hallucinating that he's having a walk among a cemetery as he spots Uncle Ben's grave, and his rage swells even more. However, Silk manages to web the beast up before slamming him with some webbed up rubble as hard as she can, saying she's not nearly as gentle as Peter is with his enemies. This does nothing to Venom, who starts to stand up and walk towards Cindy. However, in that moment her Peter sense go off once more as she starts to realize that this isn't just some random she's fighting, and that her search for Peter Parker is actually over, because right now that's exactly who she's fighting. As she thinks this, Venom punches her with all of his strength, destroying her phone and finally hurting Silk as she fights him all alone without any help to save her. Over the course of the Spider-Man manga, we've seen a new boy take Peter's suit and live his life. However, part of that also comes with the reality that Spider-Man can never have a healthy love life. So of course that would spread to Yu Onomai as well, as he gets called for a date with his new best friend Emma, who he fell in love with. However, things don't go the way he planned. First off, Yu and Emma go rock climbing, since this is how they met in the first place, and they have a pretty fun time despite the fact that Yu is still sore from his last adventure as Spider-Man. Emma tells Yu that if she were anywhere near as strong as him, maybe she could be herself, and when he asks her what she means, she tells him they need to talk alone somewhere else. At this point, Emma takes Yu to her room and he gets really nervous about what she's about to do and sits on her bed thinking she's about to confess, when in reality Emma comes right out and tells Yu that she's actually a lesbian and she's in love with her friend Sarah, which surprises Yu as he takes the news well and tells Emma he still wants to be her friend. Yu walks away from this feeling happier than ever despite his heartbreak because he has a new best friend. However, at that moment he gets a text from Silk and rushes to her side to become Spider-Man one more time. As our new Spider-Man walks away from hanging out with his new best friend Emma, who he found out wasn't interested in him, he goes to the sewers to Silk's location and finds her collapsed in the tunnels under a pile of rubble. As he picks her up and starts to lead her out of the caves, with Silk telling you that they have to chase after Venom no matter what it takes. As you tries to call for help, she tells him that her body is capable of healing, so she'll be up again shortly, but tells you that he needs to get out of here because Venom will rip him limb from limb. And as you says, who's Venom? He hears people screaming around him as they run in the streets, causing you to look out at what exactly is causing the commotion as he sees the hulking dark mass that is Venom in the middle of the street screeching at police, trying to shoot him and put him down to no avail. Venom walks up to a police officer who empties his entire magazine into the monster, but Venom shrugs it off and throws the officer's car across the street onto another as he swings down to end the man's life but completely misses as a web hits the officer's back, pulling him backwards just a few feet. And Spider-Man arrives on the scene, helping the officer get away as Venom puts Spidey right in his crosshairs, and the final battle truly begins. As we reach the final battle of the Spider-Man manga, where a boy with no powers finds a suit, we watch as a mysterious man stands over the battlefield watching Venom, Peter Parker, and Yu Onomai stand off. As Venom swings down towards Spider-Man, who narrowly avoids the attack, thinking to himself that there's just no way he can fight a monster like this, but maybe he can buy time for someone who can. From here, we see Yu repeatedly hitting Venom with web shots in his face and even trying to pin his feet to the ground, but none of it is more than an annoyance to the rampaging beast as he lunges at Spidey and tries to chomp down on his head. However, he stops in his tracks and starts to hutch over in pain as the Venom symbiote starts to bubble and reveal the face of the man wearing it, Peter Parker, who Yu recognizes when Peter says run. With great power, there must also come great ecstasy. As the symbiote forms over Peter once more and Venom overpowers his personality, causing him to lash out towards Yu once more as he unleashes a brutal barrage of Venom tendril lashes on our Spider-Man, who just has to take the punishment as he tries to run away, but as he does, Venom throws rocks his way that send a car that he's hiding behind flying towards a church bell in the background as Yu watches the Venom suit start to fall off Peter in reaction to the noise and realizes what he has to do. As Peter Parker gets taken over by the Venom symbiote and continues to attack Yu Onomai, he makes a mistake when he knocks a car tire into a nearby church bell, causing Yu to quickly figure out one of Venom's biggest weaknesses in all the media he's in, which is sound. Yu thinks to himself that right now would be the perfect time to run away since Venom is stunned, and thinks to himself that he has to try to save Peter. So he shoots a web at the nearby church wall and actually climbs all the way up using the strength he's gained from rock climbing to reach the bell with another spider web and finally ring it over and over again as hard as he possibly can. This causes Venom to crash to the ground as a dome of darkness surrounds him, and Peter continues to struggle, telling you that he's not a monster, but at this point he can't even remember who he is anymore. It's at this point where Yu thinks that this entire time he thought he knew who he was, a useless failure with no friends and a coward. But by finding Spider-Man's suit, he got the courage to be who he was really meant to be, a hero. So he takes his mask off as everyone is watching and puts it in Peter's hands, saying, "You're Spider-Man, you're my hero," as something snaps inside of Peter Parker's mind, and in an instant he gains control of the symbiote all at once, standing before Yu in his black suit. After Yu Onomai saves Peter Parker from being taken over by the Venom symbiote, we see Peter taking full control and changing into a flawless black replica of his Spider-Man suit. However, because things can't just go easy for any version of Spidey, right at that moment we see Mysterio hovering over the battlefield as he tells Yu he'll pay for getting in his way. Mysterio releases a swarm of green smoke all over the battlefield that turns it into one huge green screen, as illusions spring up everywhere around the Spider-Man, causing Peter to assure Yu that he'll protect him. First, an illusory scorpion swings at Peter, who punches back, saying, "You're the reason MJ broke up with me," taking out some of his anger on the fake, as an illusory rhino shows up and slams on the ground in front of the two, destroying a large section of the ground around them because Mysterio has thrown a massive piece of rubble at them covered by the illusion. Spider-Man uses his webs to swing Yu around and keep him safe, but Yu ends up accidentally kicking the real Mysterio in the face, giving his location away, as Mysterio takes some punishment from the Spider-Man before using his grandest illusion yet, the entire Sinister Six. In the final battle of the Spider-Man manga, we watch as our American and Japanese Spider-Man struggle with Mysterio's illusions, as they're also swarmed by the entire Sinister Six, which is comprised of members like Vulture, Kraven, Electro, Sandman, Doc Ock, and more. Peter immediately realizes that this is super dangerous. Again and again, he tries to save Yu as they get knocked around repeatedly, but finally, when Sandman sends Peter flying, he feels like he finally has a sense of where he is in the city, despite all of Mysterio's illusions, because Peter Parker is a born and bred New Yorker, so ultimately his greatest ally in any encounter where he can't trust his senses is the city itself. This causes Peter to send a web flying far out of the green screen cloud that Mysterio has them trapped in, which attaches to a nearby building, allowing Black Suit Peter Parker to escape and finally understand the situation as he dives back into the green screen cloud, crashing into Mysterio and destroying his mask entirely, bringing the illusions to an end. As everything is over, Yu finally stands up and goes to shake Spider-Man's hand since he's finally being acknowledged by his hero. However, in that moment, Spider-Man raises his hand and shoots a gun at Yu, you. After a difficult battle between the two Spider-Men and Mysterio, our new Spider-Man gets tricked by an illusion of his hero as Mysterio tries to fire down on you with a hidden weapon, but Peter gets in his way using his black suit and point blank catches the bullet, telling Mysterio this is over, as he webs him up to a nearby building and finally web swings away with you to the top of a skyscraper. Here, you finally explains the entire situation of how he found the Spidey suit and how he struggled to put it on, but couldn't put it down once he realized that he could be helpful, with Peter telling him that he's a hero and he sometimes feels the exact same way, so of course you can call himself a hero despite what anyone says. Finally, as the story reaches its end, we see you giving the suit back to Spider-Man as he tries to go back to his daily life, despite the fact that everyone thinks that he's the true identity of the web swinger. But whether or not he'd come to embrace this or hide away for the rest of his life, this story is at an end. So now let's talk about the time Insomniac Spider-Man met Tom Holland's Peter Parker.